build a whole new reality from the ground up. And I don't mean in a video game, I mean in the real world. Today, we're diving into a blueprint that claims to do exactly that, the Delta T Squared Consortium. Now, I'll be honest, it's dense, it's challenging, and it's pretty mind-bending. But let's try to unpack it together.
Okay, this quote right here is basically the key that unlocks everything else. It sounds complicated, but the idea is that there's no outside observer. You can't just stand apart from the system and study it. The moment you engage with it, you are synthesized into it. You become part of what the model calls its metabolism, the living process that keeps the whole thing running. Just hang on to that idea because it's the foundation for everything we're about to get into. So to put it a little more simply, the Delta T Squared model is basically asking this very question. Can you actually engineer a new reality? Well, it suggests the formula is these three things. You need a house that acts like an engine, a system that keeps it all stable, and a completely new dictionary to describe it. Let's see how they say it works. All right, here's our roadmap so we don't get lost. We're going to start with the core philosophy, then look at the actual house that powers this thing. After that, we'll get into the system that keeps it stable, explore its very unique language, and finally, we'll zoom out and try to grasp its ultimate vision. Okay, so first things first, we have to understand that this is not just some thought experiment. The whole point of the Delta T Squared model is that it's meant to be a practical guide, a really hands-on attempt to completely remake how a community lives and breathes. And this is the crucial part. The source material is adamant that this isn't some sci-fi concept or far-off utopian dream. No, it's presented as a currently operating system, a living, breathing reality on the ground in the Koya Dominion of Sierra Leone. All right, let's move from the abstract to something really concrete. Let's talk about the house itself. This is not just a place where people live. This is the Kenema mansion, and it's described as the actual engine that drives this entire world. And of course, it has a very specific, very technical name, a transjective hyperorganon. I know, it's a mouthful. But let's break that down. We need to forget about thinking of this as just four walls and a roof. The model insists we see it as a living organism, a metabolic engine that is actively breathing in, processing, and responding to the world around it. So how does a house work like an engine? Well, according to the model, it is constantly doing stuff. It's not just sitting there. It actually regulates its own temperature. They call this thermograce. It takes things that we would see as problems, like heat or dust, and treats them as information, as data to be processed. The very walls are said to have wall memory, and the foundation engages in soil think, which literally blurs the line between the building and the earth it stands on. The whole point of all this is to ground the people inside in what they call a hand-bound realism. So if the house is the engine, what are the mechanics that actually make it run? Well, that brings us to the fourfold rotation. This is the system designed to keep everything in a stable, but also dynamic, balance. So the whole system is built on four core pillars. You've got ultra, which you can think of as the spiritual spark, the will to keep going. Then extra, that's the social glue, your duties to your community and family. Meta is the brain, the feedback loop for reflection and learning. And finally, intra is the self, that connection to your own body, your own breath. The key here isn't just these four things, but the fact that they are constantly interacting, constantly rotating. And that rotation creates different states. For example, in what's called a reverted state, faith sparks embodiment. So prayer is grounded in the physical feeling of your own breath. But in an inverted state, kinship fuels reflection, meaning the work you do together as a community creates your shared understanding of the world. See? This constant flow is what prevents the system from ever getting rigid or stuck. All right, now we get to what might be the most radical part of the entire model, building a new language. And this isn't just about coming up with academic jargon. The model argues that to create a new reality, you absolutely have to create new words. They call this a verbo-kinetic insurgency, which is a fantastic phrase, you have to admit. The core idea is actually pretty simple. The words we inherit from our culture come with a ton of baggage, all these preloaded assumptions. So if you want to build something truly new, you have to reject those borrowed definitions. You have to invent your own words to literally speak your new reality into existence. So what do these new words look like? Let's take a quick look at a few. First up, palm praxis. This is this idea that real intelligence isn't just in your head, it's in your hands. It's the knowledge you gain from the physical act of building and fixing and sustaining things with your own two hands. Then you have something like stamina org. Again, it takes an idea we all know, stamina, and just deepens it. It's not just about physical energy here. It's a measure of the community's collective endurance, a resource that's both spiritual and physical. It's kind of like the fuel in the tank for the entire system. And for a final, and I think really cool example, there's soma dust. Now, think about the dust that settles in your house. We see it as a nuisance, right? Something to be cleaned away. But in this system, dust is seen as an epistemic interface. That's a fancy way of saying it's a surface where the community's knowledge gets tested. Are you being vigilant? Are you maintaining the system? The dust actually tells the story. It turns a chore into a really meaningful act. So you have this house engine, this four-part system, and this whole new language. But why? What is the ultimate goal of all this? Well, it's to achieve a truly post-global vision. The model calls this dominion insistence. The goal is to build a sovereign reality, one that is self-sufficient, that generates its own meaning, and is anchored to a specific piece of land, completely independent of all the external global financial and cultural systems we're used to. And the fuel for this is what they call joyful Afro-optimist accelerationism. Now, acceleration here doesn't mean moving faster in the way we usually think about it. It means intensifying and thickening the local reality, building your world so densely and coherently that it can actually outpace the decay and the pressures coming from the outside world. And the energy source for all that? Joy. And we're not just talking about a handful of new words here. To give you a sense of the sheer scale of this language project, the source material claims the household has generated around 300 of these living neologisms. That's not just a glossary. That is a complete parallel vocabulary built from the ground up to describe and sustain their very unique reality. This final quote really just pulls it all together perfectly. It's described as a Prometheotopian bypass. It's not some future dream. It's a present tense project. The goal is to create a high-tech human estate, but not through Silicon Valley tech. No, it's through the intense, masterful application of low-tech, hands-on skills. It's a vision of a handmade modernity. Which leaves us with this one final, really provocative thought to chew on. The delta T-squared model is built on the idea that the words we use fundamentally shape the world we live in. So it's worth asking yourself, if you could invent your own words, completely free from all the borrowed definitions, what kind of reality would you choose to build?